This is breaking news here on KCAL and streaming on CBS News Los Angeles. Good evening, everyone. I'm Susie Suh alongside Mike Rogers at the desk and Desmond Shaw live in SkyCal. As you can see from Desmond's picture, he's showing us a CHP pursuit in progress right now, a grand theft auto pursuit. Let's go upstairs to Desmond Shaw live in SkyCal with an update for us. Desmond.
Susie, look at these speeds, 125 miles an hour. We have an extremely capable and allegedly stolen Dodge Challenger here, the two-door version, and we are really flying here westbound on the 60. Now, another complicating factor is that they called this an assault on a peace officer as well, assault with a deadly weapon. Most likely the vehicle here, that a lot of times when we hear that, that means that they probably bumped into the cruiser or hit them. Not seeing any serious damage though on this vehicle. So if maybe an officer was hurt in the process of trying to pull this person over. That's not clear, but look at these speeds here. We've been above triple digits the entire time we've tracked this and just cutting all over the freeway. Now, here's the thing. There's not actually anybody behind this person right now, but that is not slowing this guy down. They're monitoring this one from the air. It began in the Ontario area, and then Ontario reached out to LA County Sheriff's deputies. They reached out to CHP to try to get some ground units. One CHP division didn't want anything to do with this. Another one said that they didn't have any available units. So they're still trying to get other CHP jurisdictions involved here as we go through a lot of different areas here. But we also had that incident up ahead that we were covering earlier. There may be some residual traffic. Yeah, and look at that. That's why this guy now getting off the freeway didn't want anything to do with that traffic with that big rig incident that we were covering earlier today on a KCAL News. So let's see what happens now as we get off the freeway here, Susie, westbound on the 60. I believe we're off at San Gabriel Boulevard.
Yeah, I want to bring in Mike Rogers from the desk. Mike, any information about how this started?
Yeah, Susie, we're working on that right now. We're giving a call out to Ontario Police Department. We found out about this as he pulls into this parking lot here when the Ontario Police Department got into pursuit on it westbound 60 at the 71. The Ontario helicopter tried to get... Oh,
yep.
He's getting out, isn't he?
Out. That's it. Oh, two people out, and there you go. They are now out of the vehicle. Looks like they might have run into a Staples here. Some kind of, as we come around, we'll see what business they ran into a busy shopping center, though, and out of the vehicle. At least the danger of the public is over as far as the driving. It looks like maybe into a Walgreens. So unless they're stopping in there to get some snacks and some water, hopefully this pursuit is over.
Yeah, so for now, as far as we know, Mike and Desmond, there are no ground units on the ground to speak of, as Desmond is writing out and showing us the picture here, because of the fact that multiple agencies said that, one agency said that they were not available to do it, another agency said that, no, we won't take this, and lots of different things happening along the way, right, Mike? Yeah,
so yeah, and now we're into and I believe, Des, if this is north of the 60, I believe, so now we're going to be into the Monterey Park PD's jurisdiction. They're kind of right on the border with the East LA Sheriff here. So now we're talking about even additional agencies trying to get involved in this. But, the sheriff's ship that you see flying through Desmond's shot right there almost sounded a little frustrated that they couldn't get the CHP to get involved in this. CHP is not really one of those agencies that doesn't want pursuits. They usually get involved pretty quickly, especially when we're talking about assault with a deadly weapon on an officer. It looks like, Desmond, we got a patrol car right there. I don't know if that's sheriff or who that is down there to the left. But at least that's pretty quick. For not having any units in the area, it's not CHP. Yeah, that is Sheriff. So East LA Sheriff. I guess the benefit of having the Sheriff's helicopter overhead is at least they can communicate pretty quickly with East LA Sheriff's deputies. And I think Desmond doing the same thing here. They're checking to make sure they don't run out the back. That's kind of the typical motive for these guys is they'll run in the front straight through the store and pop out the back, and hopefully before anybody sees them. Obviously, these guys have a big head start now because the CHP didn't want to get involved. Now, Ontario Police's helicopter actually came out here as well. They were trying to catch up with this when it was in their area. They've been tailing it the whole time. So now you have the Sheriff's helicopter, the LA Sheriff's helicopter, Ontario PD helicopter here as well. So hopefully that will at least lend them an additional set of eyes. But now the Sheriff's setting up what they call containment, which is where they're going to lock down each corner of the shopping center or the area where they think the suspect is in and just try to systematically search for them. Again, they've got a big head start on the sheriff's deputies.
And I imagine a lot more ground units will be showing up to do just that, as Mike was just talking about, setting up a perimeter, if you will, around this store. We believe it's a Walgreens, and just to make sure that they don't escape out the back, or also informing customers inside there to watch out for two people. As far as we know, we saw two people go inside the store, run into the store, leave that car that was reported stolen and was being chased by a helicopter, actually, and not by the CHP ground units. So as what you're looking at right here is the end of that pursuit. And Mike, was there any information about, again, how this started and where the car was stolen from?
No, and you know, that's going to be an additional issue that they're going to deal with here is that, I mean, the plates on the car will do them nothing, right? They're not going to be able to figure out who these people are just based on the plates. Hang on one second, I'm just getting a suspect description. Sounds like two men, both wearing black over black, which means a black shirt or black sweater and black pants. So that's what they're doing. I'm listening to the airship now kind of guiding in units to hold these positions. But yeah, I mean, it's you know, who knows how much information Ontario PD was able to gather.
Sure.
You know, they were chasing these guys. But on the freeways, Des, I mean, when we first got over this, doing like 120 miles an hour down the freeway. So it's kind of hard to get a good look at anybody when they're doing 120 miles an hour. So who knows what kind of description the Ontario police officers were able to get of these people to be able to give them. At least the helicopter was able to give kind of a vague clothing description as we have more units now pouring into the front of the shopping center here.
Yeah, Desmond, let's go upstairs to you just for that update with more units arriving.
Yeah, so here they come. It's LA County Sheriff's deputies arriving, even though, you know, they had been requesting CHP on this. And you saw that first deputy get there pretty quickly. And we were listening to their helicopter overhead, and they were, you know, asking if we saw anyone run out the back. And we didn't, you know, but mainly possibly because that deputy got there so quickly. So able to hopefully seal off this store, unless they ran out somewhere here along the side of the store, then they're most likely still in there hiding somewhere. I don't think Walgreens stores are too large unless they, you know, darted out underneath this awning and into another store. But quite a few deputies here now to go and lock this one down. But, you know, who knows if they might have gone through an outfit change or anything in the bathroom. It could be very hard to tell who is who in this one because everything happened so quickly and because they were able to evade law enforcement there on the ground with those really high speeds. Weren't able to get anyone there. I mean, a Dodge Challenger, you're talking some really powerful straight line speed there. But once they saw that traffic on the westbound 60 and that incident that they were going to get stuck in, they decided to get off the freeway and bail the vehicle here. And now the search is on inside of this Walgreens and the surrounding stores for the two suspects, black on black, who got out of the vehicle and ran.
Yeah, that could have been a very different situation, you know, had they continued on the freeway and ran into all that traffic that we're talking about earlier. I want to go back to Mike Rogers at the desk with this update. Mike?
Yeah, so Susie, well, that's interesting. Even though there's no suspects in the car, they're putting spike strips underneath the tires, I guess, just in case they run back into the car. But that was kind of interesting. The other thing, Des, if you can pan to the left a little bit, I want to see those other units. It sounds like they're waiting to go in. I heard them ask for the number for the management of the Walgreens to, you know, maybe make contact. That's an Ontario police car that is also now caught up to this and is here as well. So, you know, I mean, we've seen in the past different pursuits when they run into stores like this, the officers will just run right in behind them, you know, because there is a public safety issue here as well. If there were customers in there, there's employees in the Walgreens, all of that. It looks like the sheriff is taking more of a containment type approach to this, where they're getting all their positions locked down and those deputies are waiting out front. So it's hard to tell. Sorry about that, I'm listening to the thing. They're shutting down the parking lot as well and keeping people from going into the parking lot. But, you know, it sounds like they may do something where they'll get as many people as they need and then maybe go in once all their containment is situated. But definitely different for me. Des, I don't know if you've seen differently before, but I think generally when we see these things, these officers kind of run right into the store right behind them. And that's not the stance the sheriff is taking right now.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. I think you're absolutely right. Maybe they're just thinking that since they were able to get the rear exit covered so quickly, maybe just be best to wait outside and see who comes out. Maybe now that they have some Ontario PD officers here, they may have a more accurate description if they were involved with this incident earlier from, you know, where it started. And I'm just really curious to see what the, you know, assault with a deadly weapon on the deputy charges, because I look at this vehicle and I don't see any kind of damage. It looks to be perfectly intact, no dents or scrapes or any kind of damage for a crash. That's usually what triggers that want. So it just makes me wonder if something happened with an officer that was actually out of the vehicle. And if they were, you know, obviously, hopefully they're okay, but perhaps they got a better look at who they're dealing with.
Yeah, and as Mike Rogers at the desk was talking about, it looks like the sheriff's deputies put some spike strips underneath the car that was stolen, that was being pursued initially before they stopped here in front of this Walgreens to run out and go into the store, just in case they try to get away. I think that's something that they want to make sure that does not happen, obviously, because they have been chasing this person for quite some time now, and they were going at high rates of speed with no regard for safety for others. And now, as we're talking about safety, the safety portion of, the freeways and not being on the freeways, as we were talking about, showing you on the right side of your screen how fast they were going on the freeway, obviously being a big danger to people, to the public. But now, officers have to concentrate, or deputies have to concentrate on the danger inside, the possible danger inside the store right now, because we don't know if these people are armed. They're taking a stance that pretty much tells us that they're not armed. I think there would be a heightened sense of, security here if we had any word that they were actually armed, these suspects that were in the chase. But it looks like for now that they're going to be setting up this perimeter and taking their time to make sure that they go through the store and find these two suspects.
Yeah, and Susie, the other cars that I'm looking at down here, Monterey Park PD also joined in on this. The sheriff had told us, or we heard on the radio, that the Ontario police officers had also made it on scene, but it looks like they're getting a lot of help from Monterey Park because I believe this is either in their city or right on the border of their city. So they're involved in this as well now.
Yeah, let's go back upstairs to Desmond Shaw live in SkyCal. Desmond, are you seeing more units arrive and any change in what officers are doing out there, deputies?
No, not much. Well, we did here. We actually do have a few more units are beginning to arrive. So now, what Mike was just saying, we now have 3 different agencies that are involved in this, and they're, going to be working to get everyone out of the parking lot here as soon as they can. Hopefully, some of these folks can get their vehicles and not have to ditch them for hours like what happened last night down in the Santa Ana area. We know that incident didn't conclude until the wee hours of the morning, but they have everything covered now at this point, so it might just kind of be a waiting game. They're probably going to go in eventually, but there could be quite a few people and certainly employees in this Walgreens just wondering what is going on.
Yeah, I was going to say I haven't seen anyone walk out yet. Have you seen anyone walk out, Desmond?
I haven't seen anyone walk out, but I would imagine that one of the clerks in the front, one of the checkers, would have seen 2 people run in, extremely panicked, and they're going to be able to give an ID of those 2 suspects if it comes down to it. But you just hope that there's nothing nefarious going on in there besides 2 people hiding, if it's in a bathroom or an aisle or in a storeroom or what it is. But definitely pretty unusual and probably a scary situation for whoever is in that Walgreens besides those 2 suspects.
Yeah, sure. You can only imagine, shopping inside Walgreens, and then suddenly 2 people run in. Who knows what they were saying or screaming, or who knows if they were just quiet and maybe went somewhere to hide, or perhaps change out of their clothes, as Desmond was talking about, as we got a very vague description of the 2 suspects involved in this chase, all wearing black as far as we know. But that could change. They could be, walking out in different kind of clothing. So definitely the deputies want to keep that in mind as they are surrounding this Walgreens right now. The back also checked out there with deputies and just surrounding this entire area and making sure that no one is in danger, obviously, because people running in here randomly, with customers inside the store, that's a very scary thing, depending on what they were saying and what they were doing. Yeah,
and Susie, you talk about, switching clothes. We've seen that happen before, too. I always think about that when we hear these suspect descriptions and these people are, it is 6:45 at night and it's 87 degrees outside, at least here at the broadcast center, and they're wearing sweatshirts and sweatpants, right? And so you always wonder, well, what's underneath of that? Do they have shorts on? Do they have a different colored shirt? Is that something they can easily swap out? And I mean, the bad news for them is that they ran into a store that also houses a pharmacy that is sure to be covered in security cameras, right? And if the sheriffs go in there and they don't immediately identify who they're looking for, they'll hold everyone until they can look through some of that security tape and figure out, they'll obviously see these 2 run in. I imagine probably every inch of the store floor is covered in security cameras, right? I mean, I guess you could go into the bathroom and change, but the entrances of the bathroom are probably covered with security cameras as well. So You know, the bad news for them is they ran into a place where they're probably already on camera doing whatever they're doing in there. So if they are still in there, it's not going to be difficult for the sheriffs to probably figure out who they are. The big question, though, is are they in there? Were they able to sneak out that back door? We certainly didn't see them, but you know, there's a million ways to get out of stores. It's possible.
Yeah, that's true. Desmond, maybe this is a good time just to let our folks know just how this all started and where you picked it up.
Yeah, it began in Ontario. We were actually headed to, we had heard about another pursuit going on, and then we had heard, just happened to hear Ontario PD requesting some help from LA County Sheriff's Deputies helicopter and giving a description of what exactly was going on. And we heard about this vehicle flying along the westbound 60. We first heard about it, even though it came out of Ontario, heard about it in the Chino Hills area, and they just came barreling on that westbound 60, flying on the right-hand shoulder in the center divider, zigging and zagging all over the place. So, you know, on the ground they had a lot of trouble keeping up with it. They were only really able to keep tabs on it from the air. There was, we heard about all the kind of bouncing the ball back and forth with CHP, trying to get them involved. They weren't able to get CHP on that in time to get any units behind. And this is, you know, unfortunately what can happen. These suspects, when they're going this fast, they might only need 30 or 45 seconds to make a move, and at the very least make it extremely difficult to apprehend them. Now, they did run into this, you know, closed area, and we were looking at the back from the very beginning, because that was what we were thinking, is that they were going to try to you know, get out the back door. Didn't see anybody come out. Now we see a bunch of people congregating here, and look at this. They are getting ready to come out with their hands up. So here we go. Now we're going to start to see some people coming out. We're kind of doubled in here and shooting into the sun, so I apologize if the shot looks a little bit weird. But now you see people coming out, and now here's someone who's wearing black and black, as that original description said. So wondering if this is, you know, one of the suspects. And we see, you know, other people waiting to come out with their hands up as well. So this is what they're going to be doing probably with everyone that comes out until they're confident that they have the two people they were looking for.
And, you know, how scary for these people,
I was just going to say that. I mean, how terrifying to be just shopping at Walgreens, and now you're being, whether you have anything to do with this or not, being, you know, taken at gunpoint by deputies. Now, it looks like they've just released that person. You know, who knows if they're going to go talk to other officers or if they're just free to go. But, you know, as Des said, one by one, this is going to be the protocol here, and that's just terrifying.
And I thought that person might have been the person, as Desmond was talking about. We're talking about the description of the suspect being in dark clothes, black, all black clothes. So, you know, anyone fitting that description right now, obviously they're going to be looking hard at. But it looks like every single person inside the store, as we're seeing here, because we sure didn't see this woman walking into the store, fleeing that car. So it looks like, as Desmond was saying, you know, every single person inside the store will be looked at by the deputies here with their hands up, and then processed, you know, down the line here, maybe for an interview.
Yeah, and you know, Susie, the fact that that first person that we saw that was wearing black over black, which is, you know, how they described it on the radio, to me, the fact that they kind of released that person so quickly means they're pretty sure about who they're looking for, right? You know, if that person kind of matched the closing description and they are still like, okay, we know it's not you, my guess would be they probably have a pretty good idea of exactly what the people look like.
And you can tell, you know, they have a different stance, you know, than the first person. Actually, they're saying, okay, put your hands down now, and they're just kind of walking away quickly.
Yeah. And
you wonder how many people were in there in the first place. Because, you know, so far I'm counting at least 5 people coming out. And we know these 2 individuals the suspects from the chase, were wearing all black. And so obviously that's what we're looking for right now. But we don't know if they went in there and changed. We know there's clothes inside Walgreens. Some of the stores actually do have clothing. So we don't know if that's been the case, or they're going to come out here just like these customers are with their hands up. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, and Susie, what they'll do is after everybody comes out, if they don't find the 2 people, then you're talking about a kind of systematic search of inside of the store, which, you know, I mean, a store is not a terribly friendly place for law enforcement to try to have to look for somebody, because you've got aisles, you've got blind spots. You know, they're going to really have to kind of row by row kind of push forward through the store until they find who they're looking for. Bathrooms, offices, you know, all types of different places to look at.
Yeah. You know, I imagine, you know, we're talking about, you know, not knowing whether or not these individuals are armed, but I imagine if they were armed and they were, you know, brandishing their guns or waving their guns around inside the store, that people would be taking a different stance and the calm stance that they're coming out with right now.
Yeah, people and probably law enforcement. If law enforcement believed that there was an absolute, imminent, immediate threat to life, I don't believe they would have done this kind of containment and wait and see type of thing. They would more likely have gone straight in if they thought that there was imminent danger to these people.
But still, they don't know if they're armed or not. So they have to take all these precautions, obviously. Desmond Shaw live in SkyCal following this from the chase portion of this incident. Let's go upstairs. Back to Desmond now for an update. Desmond?
Yeah, I mean, we just continue to peer through, and there's, you know, a number of people that are lined up here getting ready to come outside. And you know, I'm pretty sure, I mean, it was a really quick look, but it looked like two kind of thin guys that went inside the store. We only caught maybe about 1 second to look at them. So, you know, a lot of these people coming out, you know, obviously a lot more obvious than others. So it's just going to be very quickly to funnel all of these people out of the building. And, you know, I would imagine that the suspects are going to be the very last to come out on this one, or maybe they won't come out. You know, maybe once they get everyone out, if the suspects could easily be hiding in the bathroom or something like that. We did just hear some more chatter, though, on the radio. It sounded like deputies in the helicopter or on the ground were radioing up to the helicopter that the fire escape, the rear emergency exits were locked, that they were not open. So that confirms that no one got out of those the rear exits there. So they do still have every reason to believe that these people are still inside. But, you know, let's get all the innocent people out, and if we don't ID them, then they'll go in and, you know, go aisle by aisle and go in and force those suspects out.
Oh, looks like a lot of people were in that store.
Yeah, and there was a little girl right there, too, that just came out with her mom or whoever that is. But, you know, I mean, it's just innocent people just out doing their everyday business get caught up in these things. And, you know, there's always, pursuits are always risk versus reward. What are you going to get out of chasing these people? You know, and I'm sure a lot of people are asking down there, had, you know, CHP gotten involved, had there been another agency, would they have even stopped here? Would they have kept running? You know, there's so many what ifs if things had gone a different way, but because nobody was behind these guys, they were able to pull into the shopping center and run inside, and now all of these innocent people are impacted by it.
Looks like people are still trickling out of here with their hands up. As you can see, we've counted at least, I mean, more than 10 people so far.
It's like maybe a pharmacist right there in the white coat.
Yeah, looks like it, like with a lab coat, exactly, and walking out. And, you know, again, we're looking for two suspects who are wearing dark colored clothing. That was a suspect's description that they ran into Walgreens with. So it looks like people are being interviewed here by sheriff's deputies, probably telling their accounts of what they saw, what they heard, where they were inside the store when this all happened, and where they might have seen those two suspects run to. They might be giving some help to the deputies and some information that they can actually use to find them now. Looks like no more people are coming out, Desmond?
Yeah, it looks like that's probably it. So those suspects are, boy, you know, I imagine they're sitting in the bathroom, you know, sitting on top of the toilet stall with the door closed or something like that, or you know, something like kind of Hollywood movie, I imagine, or maybe they lock themselves in a storeroom. I'm sure that the employees down here are giving deputies, you know, the information that they need to go inside. We've seen deputies kind of asking some questions to everyone. All these with the blue shirts and the white coats, those are going to be employees here of this Walgreens store. So it looks like it is probably going to come down to deputies going in and having to find them themselves and handcuff them.
And you know, Susie, I'm just sitting here wondering, I mean, are they going to do it with the patrol deputies that are there? Are they going to wait for, are they going to bring in SEB? Is this going to turn into, you know, one of our notorious hours-long kind of search?
Sure.
I mean, I guess it probably depends on what information they're getting from the people that were inside, the employees. It kind of looked, I mean, they were talking to some of the customers, but it looked like they really were focused on the employees that were in there and talking to them. So, you know, we obviously don't know exactly what's going on down there, what they're being told by those people, but you know, I'm curious, are they going to take on a big store like this with patrol deputies, or are they going to wait for SEB? I mean, the good news is we're not far from SEB's headquarters.
True, in Monterey Park.
Yeah, SEB's headquarters is in Monterey Park. I believe right off Eastern. Yeah, right off Eastern, south of the 10 freeway there. So we're, I mean, probably like 15 minutes from their headquarters. So if they wanted to bring SEB out, they certainly could. It'll just be interesting to see if they're going to try to clear this building on their own, or if they're going to, you know, treat it like a standoff. Yeah, is it going to turn into a barricaded hours-long situation, as it often does? And SEB, Mike, is referring to the Special Enforcement Bureau of the LA County Sheriff's Department, which is equivalent to SWAT. Right. And they could bring in some specialized equipment and try to negotiate with these suspects to come out. But so far, it looks like sheriff's deputies still in that sense, and maybe working on a plan right now to go inside and look for these suspects. As Desmond was talking about, you said that they secured that back door and no one was seen coming out of it, correct?
That's correct. That's what we heard from the chatter between the sheriff's deputies on the ground and in the air, that they found that those doors were locked. So, you know, now that you mention it, it is entirely possible that they're just going to wait here. They're going to call out, and this could turn into a tactical situation. Because, you know, it seems like the authorities more and more are treating every suspect, you know, has the potential to have some dangerous weapons with them. And now it's in a situation where you could have deputies walking into kind of a blind location. I mean, you've got all these aisles everywhere where a suspect could be hiding. They could be lying in wait. I mean, we didn't hear anything. Although, you know, they did call this Grand Theft Auto. So, you know, how exactly was that taken? Was that taken in the course of a carjacking or something? But entirely possible that this is going to turn into a very long situation here if these suspects don't want to come out willingly.
And you just wonder, Mike, you know, what the employees are telling the sheriff's deputies right now, you know, what they saw. Did these people come in screaming and running and threatening, you know, people? You know, we have no idea at this point. And, you know, and all of that kind of, you know, leads up to when they finally catch these guys, what are they going to be charged with? What's going to happen here? You know, Des mentioned Grand Theft Auto, which is technically a property crime, right? And then you have felony evading. But what we're also looking at now is this assault with a deadly weapon. That turns it into a violent felony. You know, the first one, the Grand Theft Auto, that's a property crime. It is a felony, but it's a property crime. And then you have felony evading, which is not considered a violent crime, but assault with a deadly weapon absolutely is. And then your point, Susie, is what did they say when they came in here? Did they make threats to anybody inside? You know, what all went down right when they came in? Des, I can't tell. You know, I see that on the left there, that bottom sheriff's deputy. It looks like they're less than lethal, right?
Yes, yeah, it's got the orange here. We'll double back in here and get a look. And yeah, it looks like you might have one of each. You have lethal and less lethal there with that. That's what that yellow butt of that weapon means. That you know, to differentiate it from lethal force. So, you know, I was just actually chatting with my pilot Jeff up here, who is a retired law enforcement, and just clarifying, because they call this Grand Theft Auto. It sounds like the vehicle was not taken by violent means.
We're going to continue our coverage on KCAL News at 8. We want to thank Sky Cal and Desmond Shaw and his crew. This pursuit comes to an end in Monterey Park, and we'll have an update for you shortly at 8 o'clock.